Now that we know a little bit more about site structure, let's return to Dreamweaver and define our very first site. First of all, we must always remember whenever starting a new project inside of Dreamweaver, it's extremely important not to miss this step. If you were to skip this step, Dreamweaver may not be as effective as it could be, and some of the links might not actually work the way you want them to. So again, it's extremely important not to skip this step. Where can we define sites in Dreamweaver? Well, there's a number of places, but first and foremost, I'm going to direct your attention to the top left of the Dreamweaver environment, and you'll see this little icon here that says Site. If I were to click on that, you would see either New Site or Manage Sites. You can create a new site by clicking either one of these. Another place where you can create a new site is by going to the Files menu. And right here, right now it says Killer Sites. It may say something different on yours. But if you were to click on that, you would see things like your computer and other elements, perhaps other sites that you've already defined. But at the very bottom, you'll see Manage Sites. And as I mentioned earlier, when you click on Manage Sites, you have the ability of creating a new site. Probably the easiest place for us to work is by going to the Site menu up at the top of the Dreamweaver interface. If you click on Site, go to New Site. What that's going to do is open up the site setup. At the moment, it just says Unnamed Site 2. So first thing we're going to do is create a site name. I'm just going to call it My First Site. Once we've done that, you'll also notice that I didn't really pay attention to things like naming convention. There are spaces here, and that's quite all right because this site name is really only going to be used by Dreamweaver. It has nothing to do with the server or the website or anything else outside of the Dreamweaver environment. So it's okay to leave spaces here. However, when we define our root folder, we must adhere to naming conventions, and we're not going to leave spaces. So here it says Local Site Folder. I'm going to ask you to click on Browse for Folder. Now, you can use the existing folder that I've provided for you, the Killer Sites folder, but I'm going to ask you to create a new one. If you don't already have one created, just go to New Folder and give it the name root_folder. You can see here that I am adhering to naming conventions and I'm not leaving a space. I'm using the underscore to connect these two words together. In the root folder, there's actually nothing there at the moment. That's okay because we'll populate this root folder with many different files. If you wanted to, of course, you could create a new folder in here called Images, CSS, among other things. But we'll do that within Dreamweaver itself. So I'm going to ask you to choose this. Now that we've got that done, we're pretty much ready to go. All we need to also do is to define where on the server we're going to be storing this information. But we'll have a whole chapter devoted to working with the server and uploading our websites. And we'll get to that a little bit later. For now, all we're really interested in is the site setup itself. In other words, where is the local site folder? Where is the root folder located on my computer sitting right in front of me? There's also a couple of other things that we can look at in here. Version control, although it's not really anything that we need to be concerned with at the moment. Even in the advanced setting, information like local info, default images folder, and whether or not the links are going to be document or site root, relative or absolute, these are things that we'll discuss when we look at links a little bit more. If we actually had a URL that we could link to, like mywebsite.com, you could enter in that information in here. But that's really only important when we're dealing with absolute links, which I generally don't like to work with. I generally like to make my links relative to the document. There's also cloaking, and when you enable cloaking, as it says here, it lets you exclude specific files and folders from all site operations. So in other words, I could say if I had any .fla or .psd files, just exclude them from the site folder. Design notes, if you're working in collaboration with other people, there's means of creating notes. File view columns, contribute, well, these are proprietary means of working. So if you're working within Adobe's contribute administration settings, you'd be able to work with it here. Templates are things that you can also be dealing with in Dreamweaver, and we'll get to that too, just as well as spray elements and web fonts as well. In here right now, it's a relative folder that would be inside of the root called web fonts. We'll get to those eventually as well. But right now, all we really need to do is to define on our computer where the local site folder is located. So once we've got that done, you might get this message about Dreamweaver wanting to use confidential information. You could just allow that. That's not really a problem. And if you don't have that, it's not really an issue. Let's take a look a little bit more at the site window by going to your Files menu. And in here, you'll see Local Files. If you expand this, you'll see where, in fact, that local site happens to be located. At the moment, however, there are no files inside of this. What we're going to be doing in the next upcoming videos is populating this particular root folder with information. Once we've got that done, we'll go about building our website.